Hello guys, David Vose here again. Another beautiful day here in paradise, and hope you're having a wonderful day where you are. Well, I'm expecting this to be a humdinger of a video today because I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I think I've got some information for you. Because this whole cosmology thing is really difficult. You can look at the Bible cursively and think you understand some things, but we're going to really understand some things today. But before we get to a few verses and some insights into some biblical words and some of the cosmology of the Bible, to really, in a sense, top this off, because what we're going to start with is the whipped cream, right? That's the whole thing's dessert, right? That's the ice cream we're going to get later. But normally you start with the cherry on top. Well, that's where we're going to start. This is going to be information that will literally fry your brain if you don't like it, and maybe cause you to do a little jig and dance and howl at the moon tonight if you do like it. But it's the truth. And some of you are going to say it's not the truth, but I guarantee it is. I remember as a young man thinking about Einstein's equations and trying to figure out electricity and just difficult stuff, even when I was a young man. My dad was an electrician, and I think he inspired me a lot on knowledge and things like that. And I kind of had this same basic idea my entire life, but I didn't realize I had it as much as I do now because I wasn't putting it down in a book or in a journal or on video. I was just having these thoughts in my head, and I thought that I was crazy, maybe. I didn't really, I knew in my heart that these thoughts seemed real. But on the other hand, all these other people were believing in all this ridiculousness. Like in my own mind, I knew that the doctors were crazy and were killing people. So stay tuned, because this is literally gonna blow your mind, this information, if you've never heard it before. But where do I start today? I want to show you some scriptures in the Bible, but before we get there, does it really matter what the Bible says? If science has proven that we came from a polywog, that there's no creator, no designer of the universe, the stars are flung out there thousands of light years away. And if you don't know how far that is, don't worry, nobody else does either. But it's so far that it's not even in our dimension. Like if you traveled there, it would take you thousands of years if you're going the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second. That's what they're telling us. But you say, well, maybe it is. It's an infinite universe, Dave. Well, there's a few problems with that. We're not in the center, and we're conscious beings. We're just an accident. We accidentally evolved out of random events, according to science. And so we're not really even alive, because if you didn't have if you didn't always exist, then you're going to have an end. And whatever consciousness you have, it's only an illusion anyway. And I agree that our conscious mind is that. But there is a higher consciousness that is literally forming thoughts. Now, science has proven this point. They will tell you that there are no atoms. They're not physical things. They're not in some location. They're not some density. Not really. They're energy, force fields. They're vibrations. They're not mass. They're not material. They're not real. They're just vibrations. Well, That doesn't make any sense either, because physical things vibrate. A string on a guitar, you pluck it and it bing, and you have harmonies between the strings, and you make it in tune, and you have a melody. So when they say, well, it's a vibration, they're not helping. They're not telling you what it really is. It's not a vibration, it's not a particle. And this is for me to you. I don't know what Elon Musk would say to this. I think he'd probably just not know what to say, because I don't think he knows much. I think these guys are just figureheads. But I'm telling you that it's a thought. And what is a thought? Well, thoughts can't be really much of anything, because you dream at night and you have thoughts and you're living in a world that seems so real, and you wake up and it's gone. So what is it? Well, it's principles, not a physical thing, like a concept. A concept is a form, and a concept isn't physical. There is no location to it. In my mind, they say leave my body, but I'm not really leaving my body, because there's no location to leave from. I am the universe. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Who was he talking about? The Son of Man. The Logos, the logic that was the Word that was in the beginning, that made all things. I believe that. That's biblical. And I believe the inerrant word of the divine is in the Bible and all scripture, which is the Bhagavad Gita, the Egyptian hieroglyphs. All of the cuneiforms and all the sacred texts are breathed and inspired from a higher divine mind that is accurate as far as we translate it correctly. So it's probably one of the proofs for me of this is this point, that science today doesn't believe, they don't say that the universe was made by higher intelligence. There may be some speculation running around nowadays. We're talking about quantum physics, and people are so smart and they think they know these things. But if you don't understand that you're trying to measure something that does not have any physical attributes other than what you give it, and your mind works based on logic, it isn't just you make it up. See, it's got certain rules, and there's an architect. It's definitive. And the architect is wisdom and logic. Because through logic, remember Proverbs 8, wisdom, she's the architect, wisdom. But logic, or the sun, created it or brought it into being. So wisdom is the mother of invention or creation. But logic is the avenue. Now, we go through this all the time, but I have to start here at this base. But we're not going to linger on that. We've all covered that before. But if that's true, and I know that it is, then the earth is not flat, and it is not a globe, because it is not a physical thing. Let's get that straight. And if it's not something physical, but it is a thought form, then what's beyond the mountain is what we imagine to be there. We don't imagine consciousness here. And over there, 1,000,000 light years, is another conscious world where now, if there were other conscious beings over there, that would be spatial. They'd be over there. And then you could measure it in light years or something, like the scientists are trying to do. But that's impossible. That's an illusion. Just like they tried to say there are particles, and they could measure them with mass and how much energy, and all. It's all ridiculous, because they've already admitted that particles are not a thing. And yet they can be measured, they say. Well, that's a contradiction. If you have point A and point B, you can measure it. But if there is no thing, there is no point A and there is no point B. It's like watching a movie, an old Western, and they get in a buggy and they travel 10 miles to the town. And you say, well, it's 10 miles. No, it wasn't. It's a movie. There's no town. It's fiction. It's just thoughts in your head portrayed on a screen. What you're talking about is a principle. So if I'm imagining something like goodness, and then I'm imagining evil, neither one of them actually exists in the material realm. They're just thoughts, concepts. The distance between good and evil is infinite. They're opposites. You can't measure, they're not on a physical plane. And so you might say, well, maybe there is another galaxy out there, somewhere thousands of light years away, and they're not related to us. They're just there and we're over here. But there is no here and there is no there. There is only the one deity, the one mind, in all, through all, and above all. I guarantee it. And that mind is not anywhere but everywhere. And from in a principle, as a concept, we're the center of what we are manifesting. And if we're here on this earth, in a sense, okay, this is how we conceive of where we're at. It looks, we call it the earth, but it's our conscious mind. It's where we dwell most of the time. We have higher thoughts that are inspiring this consciousness, this construct, but we live in this construct. Now, who are we? We're the being, and there is only one being. We can't be multiple beings that don't know the other being is there. Now, there might be multiple consciousnesses that are unaware of other consciousnesses, but those are only illusions. They're not anywhere. Probably why the Bible says you can have demons or you can talk to angels, because the higher and the lower worlds and the minds and all this is all spiritual, and it's all right here. And this is why the divine being and all his angels and the hosts of heaven aren't anywhere, and there is no shape except as a principle, as a concept. We know that where we walk is solid only because we don't imagine falling through it. So that's stable. And so what that, I used to say it represents, but now I actually think it is. It doesn't just represent it. The reality is it's not really a solid thing. That's just a concept. And what it is our concept of walking and not falling. But we call it stability. It is peace and security, and it's something we can hold on to, like an anchor. Now, there's a literal anchor that you throw in the ocean and anchor your boat, but when you use the word anchor to your soul, you know that it's more of a concept that anchors you to a certain, not necessarily place, there's no place, but you're anchored to the reality of the security that there's no chaos, but there's order. We're anchored to the order of the universe. Now, if I'm right, and I know that I am, because I've got the weight of all the scripture, from the Indian, Chinese, Hindu, all the Mesoamerican literature, all the ancient inspired utterances of the great wise ones of ancient days. And they all taught this. And we're going to talk about their cosmology and what it really is and what it really means. But it all starts with this: the divine creator and the gradations and this illusion called material that we read about in the Bhagavad Gita. and in the Bible. But science has divorced themselves from that. So they say there's another place and then we can measure it. The earth cannot be flat or it cannot be round in a material, physical sense. But it can be whatever is the order in our collective minds. We want to believe that a beautiful flower is delicate. We want to, because the concept of a flower is delicate, gentle, and beautiful. Then the petals of a rose are going to smell good. The colors are going to be pleasing. But it isn't a color and a smell. It is a concept. And so we imagine that concept as a flower. And we imagine the world as a stable ground under us. We don't imagine a globe. We imagined a stable, solid place to walk, where trees get roots and grow and flowers blossom. And we build a home. Well, what are we building if it's not real? Our mind is conceiving of a place that's peaceful, that's pleasant, where we can live most of our life, but we have other places where we go and adventure. We have other thoughts we like to go look at, but we have a little hearth, and around the hearth is the family. And this is our feelings and our emotions and our thoughts, and we're seeing emotions, we're seeing vibrations. So when they say that it's not a particle, but it's a vibration now, they've changed, they used to say it was particles. They're still wrong, because a vibration is a material thing vibrating. There is nothing material about it. The harmony is the harmony of mind. It's a symposium of concepts, thoughts, feelings, in an orderly universe. The thoughts are orderly. They have to be in order. We think of the ground as stable. If it weren't stable, we couldn't exist. Now, that's true whether it was physical or emotional. We have to have a stable relationship, we say. If not, if there's turmoil, then it's too much friction. These are just metaphors. And that's all the universe is metaphor for our being. So, since there's only one being, and all these principles are the eternal principles that guide our conscious understanding of ourselves as we've ordered it, then wherever the stable place is that we call Earth, it's got to be more or less the center, or generally the area where we're home, and everything around us is going to be our environment. There could not, therefore, then be another place in space and time far away where other beings live. Now, there could be us in another time, in another space, and because our mind has to have the concept of, well, that's not in this space and it's not in this time because that's us in the past or it's in the future. So in our mind, we put them somewhere. Fine. But the reality is that the present moment, Earth is the center of our reality. That has to be. But if that's true, how is it that science has proven that there are these galaxies all these light years away? Well, let me tell you something. You're being lied to. Those galaxies, you cannot see them with a telescope that they claim are there. Now, they know how many arms are in the galaxies, the shapes. They know how big they are, right? That's what they say. Do you know that that's not true? First of all, let's start here. If we're in the Milky Way, and there's 500 million, billion, whatever, there's like 1 billion stars in this galaxy. Unless you could get a camera, and they claim that the galaxy is like 100 light years across, it would take millions of years to get, even if you started traveling and started today. So there's no way they've ever taken a picture of the galaxy. They have no way to know what the galaxy looks like. Imagine if you're in a forest, a very large forest of thousands of acres, and there's trees everywhere. And somebody says, I want you to map all these trees and name every one of the trees and tell me what they look like and where they're at in their locations. And the elevations of these areas and stuff. Well, you're standing in a forest. You cannot know from where you stand how far the forest goes, how many trees are in the forest, or the shape or the elevations of the hills that they're standing on. It's impossible. It's a joke. And if you look it up, you'll find that they never knew about galaxies until recently. And the only reason they started saying they know about galaxies is that they just made it up, like they did Darwinism, Freudism, and communism, or transgenderism. Now they've decided there is no biological male and female because they said so. So how do they know how far a star is? We've talked about this before. And I said, well, I don't really know. Well, I have discovered now how they claim one of their excuses or one of their claims. You know, I mean, they probably have various claims. But today they're admitting, or at least I found some articles and things where I pinned this down where they didn't know. They used to say they knew, they talked about it, but it was all philosophy. They didn't know. It was philosophy. But in modern times, they say, well, we've got more equipment and, technology and better telescopes. Well, so what? With all the telescopes in the world, they still cannot see a galaxy in the spiraling arms. Or can they get outside of our galaxy and tell us that there are 4? Until recently, they were debating whether there's 2 arms of our galaxy or 4. They settled on 4, not because they saw it, but because they have determined that when they look at lights out there, they pulse. And they've developed a system that if it's got more of a pulse, it's not as far away or something. And if it pulses slower, it's further away. That's only a theory. Then they say, well, that doesn't really work because there's a lot of dust out there. How would they know if there's dust out there? And what are they talking about, dust? Like asteroids and things flying? How do they know what's out there? They don't even know what an asteroid is. I guarantee it. There is no pictures of galaxies. Those are CGI. Now think about this. They don't have one picture of outer space. They faked the moon landing. They're lying about the fact that they know what the shape of our galaxy is. That's a flat out lie, and anybody can prove that. Just doing a little bit of reading, asking some questions. Now, if you go to a Google website or something that says, can you see a galaxy from here? They'll say, oh, yep. And you go, oh, well, Dave's wrong. They said they could see them. They got telescopes. Well, what they're saying is they see a star. Or they say it's a galaxy. So, yeah, they see it. You can see it with your own eye. It's a star. It looks like a star. It's no different than another star. They don't see any spiraling arms. They have to deduce it by overexposing the light and this and that and pulses and by gamma rays that nobody can really see with their own eyes. It's just all philosophy. They have absolutely no clue. And everything that they believe now is only been recently accepted. And as every theory of the past, like Newtonian physics, was replaced with another model, it's only a model and they have no clue. They do not know how far the stars are. They have no way to measure them. Absolutely no way. They have no pictures. They're lying about all of it. Now, what does the Bible say? And then we'll make our conclusion at the end of this. Take a look at this. So, what I've found, as we've said many times, the words that they are translating, from the Hebrew or the Greek are not even, in some cases, not even close to what the word means. And I've also noticed that they knew that. In some cases, the Latin translation may be even closer to the original Greek or something. It's probably easier to translate Greek into Latin than it is into English, I guess. But when the English translation came out, now, by the way, the King James is not the first English translations. A lot of people think it is, and they say that. They make that statement. But the Geneva Bible was first, and that's an interesting read. Go take a look at that Bible. They use different words, and it's not inconsequential. So, I mean, here's an example. You've heard, if anybody who's read the Bible very much knows about the whirlwind. The Bible talks about this whirlwind. In Ezekiel, it talks about the whirlwind and describing the divine being sitting on a throne, and there's a crystal dome over his head and a pavement like basalt and 4 living creatures encircling him like a circle. Now, that's important. We picture it as a circle around a throne, but over the throne is a dome. The dome is the stars, but the 4 living creatures are the astrological zodiac signs. And in the center of that is the Lord. Well, the zodiac signs go around the earth. The throne of the Lord isn't the earth, because somewhere else in the book, well, in Psalms we could read it where it says that the earth is my footstool. So wherever the Lord's sitting, it isn't on the earth. He's sitting somewhere near the earth, and the earth is his footstool. But so the throne is very near his footstool. So you might say, well, then the earth can't be the center. The Lord is the center. We're just his footstool. But no, that's not true. The Lord is all there is. He fills up heaven and earth. But his feet walk upon the ground. That's where he makes contact with his lower consciousness. He has his head in the clouds. He's very big, according to the esoteric wisdom, because the Lord fills the universe. So the footstool really might be a bad translation. It's where he puts his feet. The Lord himself is standing on the earth as a footstool, and everything else in the universe surrounds him. The astrological signs are around him, singing holy, 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 and the 2 seraphim with 6 wings each, or the 12 houses, 6 and 6. But above the whole thing is a dome. And the word, as we've said, is a beaten, metallic, spread and beaten. They would heat it up and bang on it with a hammer and beat it out to make a shield or some kind of metal. Even you could make an axe doing the same thing. You put it in the fire, you beat on it, you get it to a point, but you're beating the metal into a form or a shape. But in this case, it's beaten out, spread out like a tent. The Bible says he spreads out the heavens like a tent to dwell in. So the heavens are all the stars that aren't in the zodiac, just all the millions of stars. And that's like a canopy or a tent in other verses. And now we know what this word firmament means. It doesn't mean metal, because it means a tent. You don't normally make a tent out of metal. But it does mean some kind of a canopy spread out. And the word that is used is a beaten metal canopy. So it's a firm, solid canopy. But in that Ezekiel passage, it talks about the whirlwind. I saw a whirlwind that was engulfing him. That's how they translate it. It's kind of stuff. But it doesn't say that. The word whirlwind is the gal, or the Gilgal, or the wheel. There was a wheel within a wheel. Those are Gilgals. They're not whirlwinds within whirlwinds. Now, maybe they are in a sense, because the universe, the solar system, the galaxy may be a big whirlwind in a sense. But it isn't, there's no connotation of whirlwind. It has nothing to do with wind anyway. It has to do with being in a circuit. You have to ask yourself, is this circuit that the sun makes around, and the stars of the zodiac, they make a circuit or a wheel. When you think of a wheel, do you normally think of a ball with the sun going around a ball? Maybe. Or do you think of a flat earth, the center of which is Helios? Oh, Helios. We're going to see that word here in just a second, because they translate that rolled up or coiled. It's funny, they admit it means maybe coiled or wrapped. And it's even used for a garment wrapped around your body. So whatever the circuit is, it's coiled or wrapped around something. Could be wrapped around an entire globe or what? Well, if somewhere on the earth there's a mountain, and that mountain is the height and the center, and beneath that mountain is a vortice cave, the Machpelah, which is where Adam was buried under the Great Pyramid, and that's the center of all continental land masses. One gets the idea that the Galgal, or the Gilgal, which is where we get the Greek Galilee, because they were Hebrews and they called it, he was from Galilee. Well, it means he was from the Gal, or the circuit. There is no town called Gilgal, or maybe there is, but Jesus is not saying I'm from one town called Gilgal, because he wasn't from Gilgal. He was from what, either Nazareth or Bethlehem or something, but not from Gilgal. What is that? We don't even, he was from the circuit. In other words, not in Jerusalem, not the hub. And we've proven that Jerusalem that Jesus was is beyond the Jordan, in the wilderness, at Bethany, or the house of On, which is Heliopolis. And I'm not going to go into that deeply. We ain't got time. I've done many videos on that. Josephus says that the Jerusalem in the days of Jesus was at Heliopolis. There were two. The Pharisees and those guys were at the Jerusalem that we know now, Herod's temple. But John wasn't there. He was out somewhere beyond. And John is how we say it, but it's Onias, and that was the last of the Zadokite priests, and we've covered all of this. And the last, well, he wasn't the last. Then there was Jesus, a guy named Jesus, sometimes translated Isus or Isun, or Jason now, we might translate it, was the last of the Zadokite priesthood at Heliopolis. Well, that's the center of the continental land masses. The Gilgal was around in a circle. Remember when they went to Gilgal and they put up 12 stones? When they were going into the promised land? And they had to cross a river. Well, the river is this the water at the bottom of the wheel. So when you put rocks in a circle, you're not making a Ferris wheel. You're not imagining a round earth and then 12 things around it like it's some kind of the sun comes up in the east and goes down in the west and then goes on the bottom side and then comes up on the top. We have to ask ourselves if when they thought of the bottom of the wheel and the top of the wheel, like we've been saying I keep using that expression, did they think that that there was something beneath the ground? The sun went around and went over the horizon and down and around and came back up on the other side? Was the Gilgal around the earth that way? That does not seem to be the cosmology. It seems that there is a mountain on the top, which is the top, and the circuit was at the base of the mountain, or the ring around the base or of this island we call Earth, and then there was at the edge of the sands of the sea, where the beast comes out of the sea. He stands on the sands of the sea. Well, he goes down into the waters, into the abyss. It's just a deep hole. So it does give you the impression that it's just this island Earth floating on some water, the top of which is in the center, this mountain that we call the summer solstice. But it could fit either way, except that we've already talked about Helios, L being the center location, and the Gilgal being around it. And when you make something like Stonehenge, you don't see a Ferris wheel. You see a flat earth with 12 stones in a circle, or a circuit. And I think that word circuit is important. It may be the best word, one of the words that helps us understand. Jesus preached in Galilee. I think he preached on the circuit. He went out from the center where he was learning in the school, and he went to the 12 tribes around the circuit and preached to them. And I'm very satisfied in my heart and my mind that that's how they saw it. So Gilgal was not a Ferris wheel going around an earth, a round ball, but a flat earth with 12 stones in a circuit. Like a flat plate. And so they had to go across the Jordan to get into the promised land, and they set these 12 stones up because they had to go down and get baptized. Jordan River, that's where John was baptizing. But originally this whole cosmology was the center, the great city, Zion, in the north. So those are a lot of words that we got to put together, and sometimes it doesn't really make any sense until you understand that that they probably was thinking of the earth not as really even as a flat pancake, but as a big mountain. And that was the solid or the conscious mind where we all dwell, in our conscious mind. And the waters were more fluid, like emotions. And the heavens were above, like thoughts. And they were dwelling in the conscious world where the trees and the animals and things lived. And the beast down there in the bottomless pit was down in the abyss. And they didn't think of the abyss as 7 oceans. It was just this one big abyss at the edge or the sands of the sea, which led to the mountain. And at the top of the mountain, which reached, and my mind can't separate the idea of the summer solstice. But we think of the summer solstice in terms today as a globe with the sun going around from east to west. And the top of the ball being the northern hemisphere. That word's not in the Bible, hemisphere. Southern hemisphere. But north and south is. And it seems like that the mountain was high, north. Our directions are, left and right and forward and backwards, but it was almost as if their north was up and their south was down, and east and west was around the circuit. If we understand then what this word Gilgal means, take a look at this. Psalm 77, verse 18. The voice of your thunder was in the whirlwind, lit up the lightnings, the world trembled and shook the earth. Well, the word whirlwind is bag gal gal. So it's gal gal. The bag is just syntax. And it literally means a wheel. Now, if you look it up, and we can click on it, and it just says, well, let me show you. Gal gal, a wheel. But then they say whirlwind. Well, a wheel and whirlwind is not the same thing. The word is literally Galgal. It says from Galgal. Well, it's the same word. There is only this one word, and they always do this. They'll say, oh, the root is this word. It's the same word. But where they don't think it means the same thing, they make another word out of it. And say, well, it's from that other word. But what is this Galgal? What's the real meaning? To roll away? But take a look at this. Let's go down here to this Isaiah 34:4. The heavens shall roll up like a book. Well, it's actually a scroll. Now, how do you roll up a scroll? Do you spin it around a ball? Is it a rolling around like a wheel or a circus wheel? Or do you roll it up or coil it into a scroll? We're going to find that it's also used for rolling a garment around you, wrapping a garment. So it's the idea of wrapping around the earth. And remember, the earth wasn't considered a round ball. It was considered a big mountain floating in this big sea. The base of the mountain was the circuit. And around it, wrapped around it, was this dome, which is made of stars. We go to Hebrews, and now this was written in Greek. And we can look at the Greek word, and this was divinely inspired Greek. These are the words, because they didn't have to translate this. They just wrote the Greek down, and we still have the Greek. And so we know what word they used, and we can look at what that Greek word means and maybe understand this word better. And here in Hebrews 1:12, it says, and like a robe, you will roll up them like a garment. Well, that doesn't even make any sense. I don't know what it means to roll up a garment. Did they, I think of, when I hear it that way, I think of somebody at the laundromat. They get their shirts and they lay them on the table and then they roll them up. Some people do that, but most people fold them. So I don't know what it means to roll up a garment until you see the word as helesis, 1667, to roll up, to coil. From heliso, to coil or wrap. So you wrap a garment around your body. In a sense, coil it. Now, a coil, what is a coil? A coil is a coil of wire or a circuit that's coiled around. Well, why would it be wrap around? Like, why would they understand it like a garment? Does that sound more like an earth or a globe and it's wrapped around the globe? Or is this dome just wrapped around the top of the mountain. Because remember, there's no dome in the abyss at the bottom of the wheel. The dome is wrapped around the top of the wheel. And that fits with the idea that it's a circuit. Because we're not talking about the dome here. We're talking about the wrapping or the circuit around the base of the mountain, which is called the Earth, which is the island. The natives called it the turtle. Like a robe, you'll roll them up. This reminds us then of Revelation. Revelation 6:14, interlinear, and Aranos, heaven, departed like a scroll, a biblion. Well, a biblion was a parchment that was rolled up. And it's rolled up, and every mountain and island out of the places. They were moved. The heavens are rolled up. Well, I've said in videos in the past that it sounds to me like a scroll is the scroll of the stars. We're supposed to read it, the story, and it passes by or is rolled up. And the mountains that reign, they no longer reign. Every mountain is removed and a new age comes. Because the circuit or the deities in the circuit, the archons, they change their order. But notice that this word is this halisomenen, 1667, to roll up or to coil. So, from just reading it, we have two examples. A garment that's wrapped around you, a scroll that's rolled up in a coil, kind of, and everything else that we've mentioned. But now let's take a look at this word Galilee. New International, let's see, King James. And Jesus went about all Galilee, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom and healing all manner of sicknesses and all manner of diseases among the people. Well, let's look at that in the Greek and try to understand what this is talking about. And he was going throughout. That's just a preposition. It could be along. It could be other words. But they're assuming that Galilee is a region, right? So they say throughout this region. Well, what if the word Galilee is not a region? He was going throughout all of Galilee, teaching. So what's that word, 1056? Well, they say a northern region of Palestine. But it's of Hebrew origin. What is this Galilee? A cylinder, a rod, a circuit, a district, also a district in Palestine. So, how could it be a district and a circuit? A circuit is where you start at one place and you go to another place and you go around and come back to the same place. It doesn't sound like a district, does it? Jesus starts from Heliopolis, goes out around preaching to all of the 10 lost tribes in the houses around its Gilgal. I've looked this up and I've pondered this. And nowhere, it's hard to find someplace where somebody will say, a scholar or something, will say, well, Galilee was a circuit that went around Heliopolis. Basically the world, the then known world, where the tribes of Israel were scattered to the four winds. But it's really deceiving because I think most people, where they're reading the Bible, they think that Galilee's a place. There's even a Sea of Galilee. And there's a Bethlehem of Galilee. Okay, so we assume it's a region. But what if it's a circuit? What if it's the peripheral or the outer areas, north, east, west, and south, the outer wheel? Then along the wheel in a circuit, there are different places like Bethlehem or the Galilee of the Gentiles. Why would it be the Galilee of the Gentiles? If you look that up, they'll say, well, there never was a Galilee of the Gentiles. We don't know what that's talking about. It means that Israel was theoretically in the hub, and the ones that were scattered, they went to the Gentiles in the peripheral around the circuit. And if you understand that this circuit represents our journey through the houses of the wheel, the zodiac, and we look up in the sky and we see that these astrological signs are going around, just like the sun's going around. They come up in the east and go down in the west. Well, they certainly look like, because we imagine we're on a ball, they're going from one horizon over the head down and at the bottom of the globe. But we're not in Heliopolis. There's a thing that I used to point out. If you look at the northern hemisphere, you see Polaris, and that's supposed to be north. And then if you go down in Australia or Argentina or something, you look south, there's no actual star right in the center, but there's a nearby solar pole star. And how can you square that with a flat Earth? Because you're looking south and you see a fixed point, a star in the south, but at the equator, if you're looking south. But if you're at the equator and you're looking north, you see Polaris, and the stars above you are going around and around, but if you're looking north, they're fixed. There's one, it doesn't move. Everything revolves around the North Star. Well, in the southern hemisphere, everything revolves around the southern pole star. So I said, well, that must mean the Earth is a sphere. But now wait a minute. What if we're on a mountain? Not a round ball, but a mountain. And the ocean is a deep abyss, a big island. And you're in the backside of the mountain. So you're in what we call the northern hemisphere. And you see stars going from one side to the other side of the heavens. And they go down over the horizon. Well, that would make sense if you're on a mountain. You can't see on the other side of the mountain, can you? Now, I just real quickly, for like 10 minutes, I sat here and drew this. I found a little picture like a mountain, and I clipped that out, and I just kind of drew the stars and things around it. And this is just for demonstration purposes. I don't know how accurate this might be. I just drew this up. It's just a basic, to give you an idea what I'm saying. So instead of a round ball, we're just living on this pear-shaped thing that we call a mountain. And under it is this water, and the ocean goes down into the abyss. Well, it still has an axis like it does now. And so what you might think of as on the backside of the Earth would be the southern hemisphere. And they could see the South Pole, but they couldn't see through the mountain to see the North Pole on the other side. We're over here on the North Pole. And I haven't figured this all out or thought this through. I'm just giving you a little diagram of kind of what I'm saying. There's something to this, and I'm going to take a look at this and see if I can perfect this model. But I do believe that this is kind of what the Bible teaches. There's, for all practical purposes, we're living on a mountain, and the abyss is beneath us, and the stars, the zodiac's going around, and we see the sun and the moon going around. So anyway, back to what we were saying. So in the summer, you've got this circuit of stars going around. You can see them not really straight up in the heavens, but towards the a little bit angled towards the north. And they're going around like in an arc, and they disappear because you're on the back side of the mountain. Now go around the other side of the mountain, and you're on the southern, what we call the southern hemisphere, but you're really on the back side of the mountain. And now you see the same zodiac, but it's just 12 hours later. So you're seeing the other 6 zodiac signs that go by that time of year. But the whole mountain's kind of on an axis. So in the northern hemisphere, on the other side of the mountain, the stars are higher in the sky. They're going to kind of go down and go swooping down lower on the southern hemisphere, or vice versa, to make summer or winter. And because the whole mountain is tilted 23 degrees on this axis, the sun then is going to be lower and create summer on that lower arc on the other side of the mountain, and then swoop around and make a higher arc on the other side of the mountain, and then that would be winter on that side. And all the while, you can't look through the mountain to look back at the North Star that you would see in the northern hemisphere, but you would just be looking up and where the arc would go down and around, you'd look in the center, and you still couldn't see the other side, but you'd see some kind of star that would everything would kind of rotate around, I think. But I'll do more research on this. And mind you, this is basically the same thing we've got now. Instead of a round ball, we've got this pear-shaped mountain. It's really kind of the same thing. Somebody's on one side of the mountain, and the other group is on the other side of the mountain. But we're not calling it a globe, we're calling it a mountain. And we're saying that the land masses are all on the one side of this globe, which is a mountain, which is what it is. If you look at all the land masses, Russia and Asia and Africa and South America and all of it in Alaska, it's all on one side of our Earth. The bottom of the Earth is just an abyss. So it's really exactly already this way. I know that it is. It's just instead of a complete round globe, it may be more like we're describing it as a mountain. And it's all going to appear to revolve around a star that you would see on that side of the mountain, which would be the southern pole star. I don't know how that would really work yet, because I haven't really thought about this. I just drew this up. But I'm going to work on this idea. And I don't even know if that has any merit, but it does seem to have merit in their understanding, in their days. Now, whether or not this is actually factual, or if it was just their cosmology, kind of a symbolic cosmology, or whether this is real. I mean, if we could determine that this works with our own eyes, and we could imagine being on a mountain and being on the backside of the mountain, not being able to see the southern hemisphere, just like you being on the other side of the Earth, but you're not really on the other side of the Earth, you're on the other side of a mountain. Maybe it makes sense. But in that cosmology that I've just put forward, at least we have at the base of the mountain a circuit where the Gentiles went to Galilee, the Galilee of the Gentiles, or the circuit along the circuit where the Gentiles are, which is all out there away from the city of Jerusalem. But all the 10 tribes were scattered out there, and they're out there along the circuit. And this is why Jesus went to the circuit. And I think this would be also symbolic of the fact that when Jesus said, I go in my Father's house, there's many mansions, he's talking about the astrological wheel, which has many houses, the 12 houses around the zodiac. And so he went into hell and died, but he died from the founding of the world. And he traversed the bottom of the wheel, went through all of these places, and went through the sea and was baptized, and went to these lost tribes that are perhaps in the stars, which they're not in our present time and space. They're in the past, or they could be some of them in the future, but they can't occupy the same time and space as we do and not be here, as we have already explained. The present moment is all right here and now. But remember, that's what happened when Jesus died. He was no longer then in our time continuum, but he went through the wormhole and went on his journey, reincarnating and incarnating and visiting each of the tribes along the path and preaching the gospel to them, as we all will do. Now, if he was in the northern area by Syria and that was called Galilee, it doesn't mean that's the region of Galilee. It just means that's one of the houses along the region of Galilee where one of the tribes went. If he'd have went south, he'd still be on the circuit, but in the southern part, which they wouldn't have called southern necessarily. Today we would say the southern hemisphere, but maybe in those days they would say on the other side of the mountain. Because remember, south was the abyss. East and west is where the circuit would go around. And you weren't really south or north. You were either east or west on the circuit. And north was Jerusalem. You always went up to Jerusalem. Now, there's a lot to this, and it would take a lot of comparing to see if this pans out, that scripturally every time, and I've done videos on this, where every time in the Bible you go to Jerusalem, whether you're north or south, you're going up. Anyway, we're over an hour, and I think I've probably confused you enough today, but I have to give you all this information, try to put it in such a way that it makes sense the best we can right now, because we really don't know the shape of the earth other than, as I've said in this video, we're creating it all around us. But I want to do another video to explain how, if it isn't really real, it still would have dimensions in our orderly conscious construct. The cosmology means cosmos, means cosmetic or order. And so the new world order that Jesus is going to bring is going to be literally a new arrangement, in that the archons are going to be thrown down and a new principalities and dominions and powers will take over, and the lamb shall lie down with the wolf and the lion will eat straw like the bull, and the desert will blossom as the rose. I'm looking forward to it, and I believe that this is going to happen in stages, but one of these fulfillments for the advancement of our world is coming, and we're having this great tribulation, but we're going to be going into this great millennial time where we're going to restore the earth to its former glory. And we'll talk about what immortality means. I mean, Noah lived 950 years, Adam, they were called the immortal ones. Perhaps putting on immortality means that we're given a body that lasts for 1,000 years, and maybe that's symbolic of longer periods of time. But I'm going to go ahead and go, and I hope that this was able to give you some ideas and put a few things in perspective. I think it was crazy what we found out about how they have said that there's all these galaxies, and they tell you the shape of our galaxy, and there's no possible way they could even know that. So what else have they lied to us about? We know that they didn't go to the moon. They're lying, and Darwinism's wrong, and Freudism, and transgenderism, and every other ism that they have. So we need to take a fresh look at the scriptures, the word of the Lord, and try to understand and ask for his guidance in our studies in prayer, and seek him that we might be enlightened and truly know his love. I'm going to go ahead and go. Lord will bless you. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one.